make a move and the bunny gets it.
I said, put the bunny back in the box. Why couldn't you put the bunny back in the box?
Roar. Roar.
Colonel Ironsides here. 200 years I stood in the gap, fighting those who would harm my country. It was my honor, my sacred duty, so help me God. 9 times they took my life. 9 times I stood back up and made them pay. The freedom fighter I could handle anything, but someone betrayed me. I was ambushed, made mortal, rendered powerless, and retired. They passed an amendment and made me a civilian before I left the hospital. For 50 years, I watched my country change. Lost its work while erasing me from history. The day I quit my job, I powered up and discovered they lied about that too. I'll remind them of freedom. I'll remind them of duty. I'll remind them of their oaths and who they serve. I'll remind them while I'm shoving it down their throats.
Psychically, I'm very well endowed.
I want to know what you're thinking. There are some things you can't hide. I want to know what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to my Thursday night show, Gen X Files. Last week, my show kind of went a little bit viral. I was also a little surprised at that one. I had a ton of comments. Excuse me. But anyway, so last week I was talking about how Gen Alpha has some attributes that remind me of my generation, Gen X. And I had some weird pushback on that. I had some people saying that Gen Alpha is way too feckless and weak to be anything like Gen X. Also, I had some people say that Gen Z was the based ones I should keep an eye on. But I did mention that I thought Gen Z was kind of split right down the middle. And you had one group that was like even worse than the millennials, and then you did have the other ones that were based, and it doesn't seem to be in between. So yeah, some Gen Z definitely is worth paying attention. They do look like a lot like Gen X. And then I had a couple people that were like, I've got Gen Alphas in my home, and yeah, those kids, they got a lot of Gen X in them. And so, that's the one thing about this, the reason I run this show, is I just want to entertain. I just want to get conversations started, and that one hit a nerve. Well, this one, I've been thinking about doing this one for a couple weeks, because I've looked at some of my previous shows, and I have kind of like realized that there's an aspect of the Hollywood self-emulation that I don't see a lot of people talking about. And something very recent happened that on Fox News that I think doesn't get talked about enough. Okay, and well, anyway, so just to get started, this is a rant that I did on a show about a year ago. Is the show was the More Monday call-in? Does the modern audience exist? It's worth a look back. But this is one of my favorite rants. I've done it all the time. I just started riffing. And if you got any kids in the room, or be any kids watching, but if there's any kids watching, I'm giving you the warning. I did get a little bit profane, but this is one of my favorite rants I've ever done. And I did a clipped up version of it, but this is kind of like almost the entirety of it. But here you go. They're advertising the people who support the corporations, but not the product, like the assholes they chased away. Exactly. Well, those assholes paid for things. Those assholes bought tickets. Those assholes bought toys. Those assholes bought games. Those assholes filled theaters. Those assholes were the backbone of the fandom. They made shows. They talked about it. They updated. They went to the parks, and they showed up at the parks with their Yoda ears on, and they imitating Wookiee noises, and they were there day one. Those assholes mattered, and you know where they went? They're still out there, waiting for somebody to say, "Hey, asshole, remember this? I got something like it. I got something that you like. I know you like it because I like it too. Why don't you come over and let's commiserate, because we want you over here. We want you, not the modern audience. We want an actual audience." Okay, sorry, I had a little bit of a sound problem there. It's definitely, I got a little profane there, and I was a little tongue in cheek, but I do think that the point was made. Okay, hi. Whoa, hey, Claudia. Good to see you. I subscribed. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. And hello, Spark. Welcome to the show, guys. Now, that was pretty much I was talking about the relationship between the Hollywood and the mainstream purveyors of pop culture, and how their attitude was, okay, we need to throw these people away and acquire this new group of people here, because this new group of people basically represent a more economical future than these people who are just aging out and they're going to die off, and so we got to find this new group of people that are going to come in, and they're going to be the economic future. Now, the thing that I didn't address, the thing that I really have yet to address, is the fact, where did they get that idea? Okay. They did get, there was like a lot of studies that were out that were like saying that, the economic future lies in the direction of the more, we'll say, woke. Okay, woke seems to be shorthand for leftist ideology. But there was a big move for that. Now, the question is, there was a symbiotic relationship between pop culture and the fandom that was broken. And these were symbiotic relationship because the fandom paid for the pop culture. The fandom was subsidizing the pop culture. The assholes were like keeping the lights on for the pop culture, for mainstream. And yet, somewhere along the line, they thought they could just keep the lights on without the fandom, the established fandom that they had. And it's befuddling as to why you would think that would happen. Well, there's something called ESG. ESG started in Europe with the WEF, pretty much the World Economic Forum's behind it. But something called stakeholder economics. Okay? Now, stakeholder economics is not stockholder economics, okay? Stockholder means that you buy a piece of something, you invest in it, that you're invested in it. Stakeholder basically means that you like trade. You don't like invest in anything. You just like pump and dump. You basically buy something as a commodity, and then you dump it as soon as it becomes less than economical. You don't stay with it for the long haul. But that all started in Europe. And a master of that is a man by the name of Larry Fink. Okay? Who's Larry Fink? Larry Fink is the CEO of a big, gigantic, or a corporation called BlackRock. Now, if you look at all major entertainment companies right now, you will see in their list of stakeholders BlackRock and Vanguard. Both of those are the companies that were basically funding ESG, which was voted into Congress at the tail end of Obama's presidency. That's why we didn't see a lot of this stuff until Trump was in office. Okay. Now, Tommy Lahren, I disagree with her on a lot of things, but she was asked this question, and she gave the best description I've heard.
You might have heard of the social credit score that the Chinese Communist Party uses against their individual citizens, meaning they rate their citizens on, well, basically whether you're a good communist, but they rate them on whether they follow the law, whether they are supportive of the Chinese Communist Party, whether on social media they're critical. You're downgraded or upgraded based on what you say and what you do, and as a result, you have privileges revoked. So if you say something against the Chinese Communist Party, then you could not be allowed to buy a plane ticket, or you could not be allowed to buy a house, or you might not be allowed to send your children to school. And this is the way that the Chinese Communist Party has exerted control over their citizens. So understanding that ESG, environmental, social, and governance metrics is the same thing, but instead of being applied to individuals, it's applied to businesses. This is one of the biggest threats internally in the United States that if we don't stop, will fundamentally change not only whether you're able to do business, but eventually what you're able to do as an individual.
Now, so ESG is a way of bringing the credit score system that China has implemented, forcing people to implement the Chinese CCP approved dogma in their lives, essentially putting pressure on these corporations, which is Chinese style economic program. So ESG has already been implemented for a while, and that's why we see a lot of these things happening in Europe before they ever got to here. But the stakeholder capitalism, the pump and dump model, plus the ESG thing, they work hand in hand. And the bottom line for both of these is changing the world, changing society. But don't take my word for it. Larry says it best.
You now make a point of that's an investment criteria for you.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. 54% of the incoming class are women. We added 4 more points in terms of diverse employment this year, and what we are doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted, okay?
We're doing the same thing.
And so it's just, you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not recruiting, it is development, as Ken said. And ultimately, it's still going to take time, but I am just as much shocked as Ken is that we have not seen more opportunities, and we're going to have to force change.
Well, there you go. We're going to have to force change. And we're going to force change is through an economic policy that this massive government-funded fund that Larry Fink is overseeing, actually taxpayer funding for these plays. Watch through Larry Fink and Vanguard, BlackRock and Vanguard. And so we're paying for this social change that has been robbing us of all of our IPs, all of our most beloved properties, the things that we love and have affection for that have just been irrevocably altered and changed right in front of our eyes. And so it's while we're sitting here, we're like, why are you doing this? Why are all the television shows have a diverse cast, and even when even when these roles were clearly not written for that particular race, and you got that race playing that the role was clearly not written for, and this happens a lot. And why are all the protagonists or main characters or the physical agents all female, And we see these things like long-term properties like Doctor Who suddenly. We saw this, ESG was in Europe first, and so when you saw Doctor Who suddenly have a female doctor, that's ESG. The way to have access to the funds was they had to make these changes. And so you're sitting here, you're like, well, they didn't have to do it. And that's true. They didn't have to do it. As a matter of fact, some of them didn't. So here's Warren Buffett.
Hi, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger. My name is Vern Cushenberry, and this question is on behalf of a group of investors that made the trip up today from Overland Park, Kansas. Given your interest in renewable energy and natural resources, I wonder if you'd be willing to share your thoughts on how a world of limited and depleting clean water supplies and declining food stocks affects your investment strategies and thinking on the future.
Yeah, I would say it's an important subject, but it doesn't affect our investment strategy to any real degree. In other words, we would love to buy another Geico, we would love to buy another BNSF, we'd love to buy another Mid-American, and we look at those businesses over a long time frame, but we are looking at what we expect their earning power to be 3, 5, 10, 15 years down the road compared to what we are paying. So I would say that there are a number of societal issues that really do not enter into our investment or purchase of business type decisions. Charlie?
Well, I would.
Okay, Warren Buffett, one of the most brilliant investment geniuses we've ever seen in the world, in world history. And he was talking about how these societal issues, and the guy that was asking the question was clearly a climatologist and clearly trying to like chide him for not doing the ESG, because Warren Buffett is one of the main people who runs a mutual fund like BlackRock, like Vanguard, and he's competitive with them. But they didn't choose to follow the siren song of ESG. Why? Because long-term, ESG is a short-term gamble for a perceived long-term goal. But the goal of ESG is not profit. Okay? That's what Warren was saying. It's not profitable. He's not looking for this being righteous or following these like rules that have nothing to do with business and have nothing to do with profitability. See, ESG is taking business and for sociological reasons making decisions that aren't beneficial for the long term. I hope I made it clear. But it's like he was saying, he's like, the real problem, the real thing is long-term profitability is building your brand. Long-term profitability is expanding your resources. Long-term profitability is establishing things and maintaining the things working. ESG goes against that. ESG says, force something new. Force societal change. And what happens is, you're forcing a sociological, ideological movement, which is leftism, forcing it onto something where it doesn't belong, and that is the business world. Okay, so what does this have to do with entertainment? Well, the entertainment has always been left-leaning. Look at where they're located at. They're located in California and New York, primarily. And those places are deepest, darkest blue. You can't get much deeper blue than New York and California, especially LA. So, these places obviously lean left. They obviously have communistic tendencies. They all obviously are quite all right with everything, every policy that comes down the pike, as long as it's got the right letter by its name. That letter is D. Okay? And so, they followed the siren song of ESG eagerly. They followed it enthusiastically. Okay? So the sociological anti-profit movement showed up, and Hollywood was more than willing to follow the siren call. Pay attention to this. Let me find the right thing. Here it is.
In the 2022 annual letter to the many CEOs under his thumb, and this includes Bob Iger, Larry Fink stated that stakeholder capitalism will be a powerful force in propelling the ESG agenda forward, saying, "It is through effective stakeholder capitalism that capital is efficiently allocated, companies achieve durable profitability, and value is created and sustained over the long term." Again, that was quite verbose, but that was BlackRock, in not so many words, telling all the CEOs under their control that unless they practice stakeholder capitalism and have their ESG score in order, there will be no BlackRock money for them.
If you do not have a lens towards decarbonization, you're not going to win one euro of business.
To be clear though, when I say BlackRock money, I mean your money, because their financial muscle comes from managing your pension fund. That's how they make their money. Under stakeholder capitalism then, companies are expected to take a multi-stakeholder approach, even at the expense of shareholder value, and instead go for what they deem to have a positive impact on the world.
This company has been telling stories for 100 years, and those stories have had a meaningful, positive impact on the world. And one of the reasons they've had a meaningful, positive impact is because one of the core values of our storytelling is inclusion and acceptance and tolerance. And we can't lose that. We just can't lose that. I think about Black Panther and the impact that had on the world, or a film like Coco. I mean, I could go on, and how we actually changed the world for the good. It must continue.
Note that nowhere in that rant did Iger say anything about Disney going back to making stories that Disney's core audience of families wanted. No, it was all about changing the world. Or, in more academic terms, creating value for other stakeholders than the shareholders. Combine that with ESG, and you have the recipe for how to make the biggest entertainment company in history flounder in just a couple of years. As their content is made so diverse and so inclusive, it becomes exclusionary to the vast majority of audiences.
And I'd heard, you hear whispers. Like, I'd heard things like, oh, they won't let you show this at a Disney show. And I'm like, okay. So I was a little, sus when I started. But then my experience was bafflingly the opposite of what I had heard. Our leadership over there has been so welcoming to, my, not at all secret gay agenda. And so, I feel like I felt like it was, maybe it was that way in the past, but I guess something must have happened in the last, they are turning it around, they're going hard. And then all that momentum that I felt, that sense of, I don't have to be afraid to let's have these two characters kiss, let's in the background, I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness.
There was a very clear point where Disney's creditors began collecting, if you will, and from there it happened so slowly that no one noticed. But what Disney effectively has done is pull a Bud Light and Heinrich their company, and they are not the only ones. So, there you have the problem, and how Disney and so many other companies ended up in their current predicament.
One second. Okay, so stakeholder capitalism. What that means is you don't truly have an investment in the company. You basically have an investment, or you have a investment in the short-term expenditure or the short-term profits. And see, when you're you own stock in a company, then you follow that company. You have to sell your stock, okay, to leave it. And that's so you're invested. And as a matter of fact, if you stay in it long enough, they call it being invested, and you get some benefits on the backside of it, right? Now, stakeholder capitalism, which is what Larry Fink does and Vanguard does, is they basically buy parts of these companies and then force those companies to make the changes they want, or they will dump it. They have no loyalty to those companies. They have no loyalty to the long-term profitability of these companies. We used to call it robber barons, but they call it stakeholder capitalism now. And so they will basically they'll run into these companies, and they'll buy up everything available, and then they will shove in ESG until those companies start to flounder, and then they'll dump it. after they've gotten the short-term profitability. And this is the way they're planning on changing the world, okay? And so the short-term capital they're willing to boost into these companies because they buy this stock at the front end of it. They'll buy the stock at a loss to them, and the people who they're buying the stock from are very, very happy to give up their stock for a dividend that is way above market value. And what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll buy up a bunch of stockholders, and then immediately they'll start demanding changes in the companies. This ESG. ESG is the score that they have to maintain to, like Larry Fink said, if you don't meet this certain carbonization, you don't get a euro. You don't get any kind of money whatsoever. And so it's a way to force people into making changes to the way they have energy. It shuts down oil and puts in solar. It's a way to get people to basically make societal changes, race swaps, gender swaps, rewrite everything to have gay representation, and so what happens is they do all these things to please this BlackRock, Vanguard, and these ESG scores that they're forcing on everybody, and so nowhere in that equation does the fandom even equal. Sorry. Anyway, nowhere do we even enter into it. Nowhere does the traditional fandom enter into it, the formulation, okay? As a matter of fact, the whole entire idea is to get rid of the future profitability, the fandom that you have that is aging, the fandom that you have is established. The idea is those people will stay through anything. No matter what changes we foist upon them, we can guilt them into staying. Or we can say, well, if you don't support this, then this is true of you socially. And that we can just brainwash them into staying while we make these other changes and acquire this other group. And it's the modern audience that we hear a lot about. And so, but what they didn't expect to happen was what they didn't expect the fandom to leave. They said, well, these people have investment in these IPs that go back decades, all the way back to their childhood. We've got them. We've got them permanently. We've got them for life. So we don't have to cater to them. But if we, they're not going anywhere. So if we can acquire this other group over here by catering to them specifically, then we'll have both groups. And so the whole entire calculation was that this ESG money was a temporary Band-Aid. It was a bridge to the fandom that they already had staying and this new group that they're bringing in. That way, they're serving the whole swath of society rather than this nearer group here that show up every time. But nowhere in that calculation is that the fandom rebelling. The fandom saying, no, this isn't what I signed up on for. I'm going elsewhere. That wasn't in the calculation. And so once the fandom started saying, well, this isn't what I signed, what I remember, this is not what my childhood, what I've seen my childhood, then I am going to walk away they thought basically that they started panicking and they started like bad-mouthing the fandom. They started telling the fandom that they're this, that, and the other if they don't stay. Thinking they could shame the fandom into staying, but they got so obnoxious about it through the press and media. Look at all the hit pieces. Look at all the hit pieces towards fans. They're still going on. There's probably... I could probably pull up 10 or 12 hit pieces today on the fandom somewhere. But they thought they could shame and humiliate and solidify the fandom that they had. And that wasn't part of the calculation. So when that fandom walked away, they're like, well, okay, well, go away. We'll just get this new group. Except that new group doesn't support the IPs that they have control over. These new groups never like this stuff. Never will like this stuff. So they threw away the guaranteed money. They threw away the guaranteed return, the guaranteed enthusiasm, and focused on a group that may or may not ever care about any of it. And ESG was supposed to keep them afloat long enough until they acquired this new audience. And ESG was counting on the audience that was already there staying long enough for that new audience to be monetized. And the longer it went, the more the fandom ran away. The true fandom, the people who supported, the more they left, and this new group didn't show up, the more ESG got stretched. And this is what Larry had to say on Fox News the other night. Pay attention to this one.
Get you to look in the rearview mirror here. Do you believe the woke era a failed experiment? The ESG, the DEI, the kind of push for that?
Society moves, the pendulum moves all the time. In BlackRock's cases, we are responsible for managing money for everybody. Do I believe the pendulum 5 years ago was too far? Yes.
So there you go. This is Larry admitting. And there's another video of him saying this 2 years ago. But this is the first time on Fox News saying it. But he was declaring no mas about 2 years ago. Now, what are we seeing now? Okay. Now, what we're seeing is a return to normalcy. But there's going to be an overcompensation. Okay? And the overcompensation is there was a tolerance for a little bit of wokeness in things, okay? Used to there was a tolerance for an occasional gay character. There's occasionally a biracial relationship or, something a little bit more progressive being spewed. Somebody having somebody's talking about climate change in the show or whatever. But that tolerance is going to be zero for a while. In any show, even good ones. Even shows that are otherwise decent shows. People will be watching these shows with these buzzwords in their head. And as soon as they hear those buzzwords, they're going to cut it off. And that's what's going to happen in the short term. As a matter of fact, if you see one of those buzzwords in the trailer, you immediately, I'm not watching that. Or if you see an actor or an actress who was just run their mouth nonstop I see you, Mark Ruffalo, and you see them in the trailer, you're going to be, I don't think I'm going to watch this film. I don't want to support that person. And so in the short term, there's going to be there's going to be an overcorrection. And Hollywood is going to have an issue because they've got stuff in the pipeline that they've got to clear out that is full of this ESG inspired sociological alteration, okay? And whatever that may be. And the stuff that they've got to flush out of the pipes, it's got all this in it. And so they're going to be putting onto a market that is hypersensitive towards anything with this kind of buzzword ideology in it. Any kind of stench of ESG on it, and it's going to be immediately rejected. And so until they can get all this stuff out of their system, it's going to be bomb after bomb after bomb. It's going to be television shows that nobody watches, streaming shows that nobody for a while, until they get all this stuff out of their system, until they wash all this through. But the problem is, this is what killed ESG, is they are so forward focused, it never occurred to them that people can go back. That people don't have to listen to anything new. They don't have to watch anything new. They don't have to get the next thing. They can always go backwards. They can always watch something classic. They can always watch a show that's classic. And if you see, the young people aren't watching the new stuff. The young people are watching old stuff. The young people are listening to old bands, old music. I just did a video on Creed. You know, Creed was despised by the critics, the progressive critics, because Scott Stapp's lyrics had Christianity in them, and he tended to be kind of Christological in his poses. So they hated Scott Stapp. And so they just, anything Creed came out with was just denigrated and badmouthed, right? Yet, young people have discovered Creed. And Creed is doing a sold-out concert tour right now. Sold out. And their Spotify numbers are through the roof. Why? Because the young people rejected this societal change that ESG was trying to force upon them and started looking backwards. See, we have a catalog, we have a library, and that's one of the reasons why they're trying to destroy hard media, is so they can alter things from the past. So people can't go and find their comfort zone from things that they remember. They can change things on the, back here in the library. So that's what they're trying to destroy hard media. That's the reason why. It's so they can make alterations to already established IPs and classic media. And so the ESG formula was predicated on the fandom having to be current. The philosophy of the constant now. That philosophy is what destroyed ESG. Because people do not, they're not stuck in the moment. People have nostalgia. People look back. People think about, well, this ain't as good as this was, and so I'm going to go back to this. And so, the reason why Hollywood burned itself to the ground was they thought they could steer the ship without the passengers' permission. That's the reason they burn it all to the ground. We're elite. You're dummies. Shut up. We'll steer the ship. You know, take what we want to give you and just shut up and go and sit down. You see that attitude everywhere. We saw it in the Oscars the other night. You know, a lot of people didn't watch it. Why? Because it wasn't for us. It was for them. The Oscars is almost exclusively for them. There was one act out of that whole Oscar night that the general public would have been interested in hearing from. And that was the Demon Girls. And they got walk-off music. The only group that whole entire night that anybody wanted to watch or hear from them, they got walk-off music. That explains it right there. That it sums it up right there. Is they still think we care what they think. They still think that they are the melody makers. They are the singer of the songs. They are the guiding light of culture. They still think that. And they're wrong. ESG is a failed social experiment that ruined our whole entire industry, entertainment industry, because they went all in on it, and they rolled expecting a hard 7, and they got craps. Now, the only speculation left now is, will there be anything left by the time they figure it out and turn around? And there's good examples. There's examples of them already trying to do that. One's coming out later on this week called Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary is classic Spielbergian epic. It has all the earmarks of the movies that we loved from the 80s. You know, that everyday person who just wants to live their life being sent on a mission and being asked more of them than they can give. And a cute companion along the way. I mean, I've read the book, and there's probably going to be some climate change stuff in there somewhere, because the lead character, you know, believes in climate change, and so there's probably going to be some of that in there, but not enough to trigger anybody. And it's going to be interesting to watch those box office numbers, because the anti-ESG era is upon us. Everything woke must go. And I think there's going to be an overcompensation, maybe too far in the other direction, because there is a balance that society needs. The more progressive elements do tend to balance out the more aggressively conservative elements. And there tends to be a healthy balance where there's a big group in the middle. They shifted it all left. And now the seesaw, everybody that they left behind went on the other side of the seesaw, and now they're stuck in the air with their legs dangling and not enough weight to bring it back down. It's going to be like that for a while. So why did they burned it all down for nothing? Ultimately, for nothing. And this is a historical moment. This is going to be studied in sociology texts for years to come. And you're seeing in Europe right now the end stage of ESG. How does it look? Not very good. I've got friends living there, and they can give you horror stories right now. But anyway, so that's been Cooper from Telepathic Bunny Comics. Thank you for everybody that showed up, everybody that commented on the last video, even those who called me names. I love you all. Keep engaging with the channel. Thank you for the new subscribers that I've gotten. I hope that I maintain your enjoyment. I'll be back Saturday night with the Cryptids and Conspiracy crew. We're going to do the Dark Side of the Moon. Is there anything on the Dark Side of the Moon? Well, we're going to talk about that. But that's going to be Saturday night. Anyway, y'all have a very good night, and we will see you then. All right, follow the White Rabbit. Bye, everybody.